So thanks everybody for joining us today. We're actually going to get two presentations for the price of one. So really excited. The slide that you're looking at now will actually be our second presentation as Dr. Scott Weir talks with us about the Institute for Advancing Medical Innovation and a unique entrepreneurial approach to bridging the valley of death. Our second presentation, our first presentation will be actually given by Dr. Doug Wright, speaking on building an entrepreneurial pipeline and ecosystem in the Midwest Central states. Next slide, Treza. So I think that conflict of interest disclosures are noted on this slide. I don't think that any of these conflicts of interest are actually going to that Dr. Weir has relate to the actual issues that he's going to talk about. Next slide. And then just a reminder to put on your calendar to attend the next Research and Discovery Grand Rounds on July 28th, as Stacy Farr and John Spurtis talk with us about the Healthcare Institute for Innovations and Quality effort to build infrastructure to cross the final frontier of translational science. Also, a lot of what we also have been seeing around the concept of QVIC. So without any further ado, I'd actually like to introduce Dr. Doug Wright to talk with us about building an entrepreneurial pipeline and a Midwestern ecosystem for entrepreneurship. Dr. Wright, I'll turn it over to you. Are you able to get your slides up?
Believe I do. Can you see those slides?
We've got it. Yeah, and it's in presentation mode. Thank you so much.
All right. First of all,
actually, you took it back out of.
Did I take it out? Sorry. Yeah. I'll have to stay in.
That's fine.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you to Frontiers and to Ed for inviting me. It's kind of an interesting opportunity to kind of put together all of the activities that I've been involved with a number of different programs, and trying to use those programs to leverage and move forward entrepreneurial activity within our region. And so today what I'm going to kind of do is give you a survey of the different programs that we've been working with and the efforts and some of the successes that we've had to try and grow these activities in here at KU Medical Center, KU Lawrence, as well as regionally. So as we mentioned, I have some disclosures, but none are related to the presentation today. So the first program I want to talk about is a longstanding NIH-funded program called the Kansas INBRE program. I serve as the director of that. That program has been in operation since 2001. It is funded by NIGMS, and the goal of the INBRE programs across there are 23 programs across different IDEA states. We have one in Kansas, is to increase the success of biomedical research in the state of Kansas. And so we work with 10 institutions regionally, particularly in the state of Kansas. You can see these listed here. We have 3 research-intensive universities, K-State, KU Lawrence, and KU Medical Center. And then we work with a large number of undergraduate institutions to help provide resources to Kansas researchers and increase their success. Our theme is cell and developmental biology, and that is chosen to capture as many researchers as we can across the state. We support researchers through a lot of different mechanisms that I'll show you, and some of those now are really increasing in terms of their relationship to entrepreneurial activities. So we spend about $1.5 million every year on researchers and students across the state through, it turns out to be 16 different mechanisms, and many of them are listed here. One of the things that we have been really increasing in our activity is entrepreneurship and innovation, education and activities. And so we've developed a number of different programs. We feel like providing education to undergraduates is really critical for developing a pipeline to help students identify career choices and become involved in these activities. And so we support about 120 undergraduates throughout every year across these 10 institutions. And some of those undergraduates are involved in translational and entrepreneurial activities. A lot of those are happening out across the state. They are placed in laboratories that are involved in these activities, and we're providing education and activities. We also have an annual symposium every year, and most of the speakers now that we are inviting as keynotes have entrepreneurship activities or have spun out a company. And so we're really trying to provide these undergraduates, graduate students, postdoctoral fellows, young faculty, opportunities to engage in these activities. And if anybody's interested in having perhaps a medical student work in their lab for the summer, I think that we're probably ready to transition and support a variety of different students, business students, medical students, nursing students, graduate students, in terms of summer activities to gain access and education to that. One of the other programs that I've been heavily involved with is called the Sustainable Heartland Accelerator Regional Partnership, or SHARP Hub for short. This program was newly developed out of NIGMS to identify weaknesses, gaps, needs in the central region states related to academic entrepreneurship. And this was born out of a study done now almost 8 or 9 years ago that recognized that the activities within the central region and with all of the IDEA states, the 23 states involved in the IDEA programs, is really limited. It's far below what those activities should be based on the population and the universities within those central region states. And so we wrote an application and were selected to represent the single accelerator hub in the central region states. Our hub includes both Dakotas, Nebraska, Kansas, and Oklahoma. NIH has sunsetted this particular program, and so we are ending in August. But they've come up with a couple of new programs. They actually had some issues with the way that they rolled out this program, and so they've had to kind of restructure it. And so the SHARP Hub, as we know it, will be ending in August. But I can kind of tell you the activities that we've done, what we've learned, and what has kind of spun out of those activities and what will be in the future as well. So this is a partnership of the Central Region IDEA states. This is largely based on my ability to network with the IDEA states within our region and the universities involved with that. We've focused on mentoring, training, and networking to help innovators accelerate their ideas to market. And so you can see at the bottom of the slide the universities that we've worked with, and then we've also worked with BBC Entrepreneurial Training and Consulting. They've been a big component of that. BBC is well known for their support to academic innovators in terms of SBIR and STIR grant preparation. And so they've been a great partner. I have learned a tremendous amount from the folks at BBC, and they will still be available to all of us in the future. So one of the things that we had to undertake is why are the central region states faring so poorly in this market, right? Why is this space, why haven't we not been successful? One is that we have limited populations and we don't have a huge number of universities. And so that by definition includes them in the IDEA program. And so we spent a lot of time having conversations and collecting information from the various states. Each of these states is different, by the way. They're very different in terms of their ecosystem and their state support and their university support and their university leadership. But what we do know is that the activity in this area is generally that there's less than 5 startups per year in any central region state. And there are a lot of reasons for that. Really kind of a lack of faculty education or faculty interest. Financial support at every stage is lacking in our area. Really a pool of faculty entrepreneurs, and that's part of our efforts to build pipelines. And then the way our universities are set up, the time and potential risk for faculty is not aligned very well with these activities. And so we recognize that there are a lot of needs, particularly at the early stage, and I'll kind of show you some examples of that. There's a lack of management talent with biotech experience across this region, and so we've worked hard to kind of identify ways to do that. Regulatory assistance is limited, experienced mentors, and we're just not recognized by venture capital very well. This is not the place where a lot of folks look immediately for these opportunities. And so we put together a program shown in the right, to address a lot of these gaps and needs. Our objective, essentially from the get-go, was to help accelerate SBIR and STTR funding of these activities, and that's where BBC came in and really helped provide a lot of training. We ended up doing a three-pronged approach, and a lot of this was done in collaboration with Wally Meyer in the business school at the University of Kansas Lawrence. But we provided a lot of mentoring for folks from very early stage. I have an idea, what do I do next, to folks that are trying to write their first SBIR. Did a lot of assessment of their of all of the aspects of the projects, and then we help plan. We help them plan what are the next steps, what are the things that I need to do, and that process evolved into sort of a concierge service, because we found that people were at very different levels as we were starting out. Customized mentoring was the key to this, and our group, including Wally, really had to really change and pivot a little bit to understand what is the population that we're working with. So we put together a pathway for these folks, and we thought that Sharp Hub would be really focused in these sort of approach stages. And what we learned is that we really needed to have a lot of input very early on with these folks as they were getting started. And so this really customized mentoring became the focus of what we ended up doing. You can see here's some examples of mentoring that we did across the different states and the types of projects that we were involved with. We ended up having 29 participants within this MAP program, working with Wally and and BBC collectively. And so a lot of these folks were very early stages of development. And so, we had to spend a lot of time with these folks, and that's really where Wally's strengths are as well. One of the things that this program came without was any money, which was difficult. And proof of concept funding at early stages is really critical for this region. And that's really what we knew was going to be problematic. So we worked with NIH to come up with a pool of money, and NIH, to their credit, came up with $250,000 for us to spend on projects in our central region states, because we really made a strong case that without any money, this is going to be a difficult task. And so they ended up coming up with an additional $250,000, and we supported projects across the 5 states. And you can see those listed here. And we tried to kickstart these a lot of these programs to get them started moving along. And all of these projects are still in progress and moving forward and doing this. And that was one of the keys, is that this is going to take money in order to be able to do that. Here's the proof of concept from KU Lawrence. That went to Dr. Lisa Fries. Probably many of you know her. She has a lot of activities in this particular area, and she had a project looking at electrified hernia repair mesh. And Lisa's been a great contributor to our program, and probably going to be involved in a lot of the future activities as well. She's been a great resource. So that Sharp Hub is ending. There are different programs that are going to evolve out of that, and I'll talk about that at the end. Another program that I want to highlight here as a potential resource for this community is the Midwest Biomedical Accelerator Consortium, known as EMBARC. It is part of the REACH program at NIH. It's now moved into the SEED office. EMBARC was a proposal that was written by the University of Missouri, and as I'll show you, incorporates a lot of our regional components as well. This is sort of if you're familiar with the REACH program, it's sort of the second generation of REACH programs across the country. And they were successful. The EMBARC was successful based on some of the unique regional relationships that we have. I know it's weird to say that we're collaborating in good faith with the University of Missouri with the status of our basketball programs over the years, but it's been a delightful interaction. I love working with these groups at the University of Missouri. So the Embark is essentially a consortium working with the well-known Coulter Foundation program at the University of Missouri. The Kansas INBRE is a component of this, and then Sharp Hub has also been really active in this process. And so what the Embark does is has a relationship with all of these universities across the region. You can see embedded in here is our 5 regional states within the Sharp Hub. We work with these institutions to try and identify early stage innovators who really would benefit from a lot of education and mentoring. And so the Embark is a boot camp that's held every spring. It's virtual now, so all of these participants can do this by Zoom. There's a tremendous amount of mentoring by the Embark leadership team of each of the individual projects. One of the great things is that they will all develop pitches out of their training, and that they'll be able to pitch to a very excellent external advisory committee that has a lot of experience in education and connections with venture capital. So it's a great opportunity for that. If you win this competition, you will get $100,000 for proof of concept funding to support your research. And that has a match, a required match from the institutions of $100,000. So you'll get $200,000, half from the Embark, half from your institution. So that adds complexity to the issue, is that we have to work with the institutions to make sure that they can match this support. We've had good success from our central region states in terms of competing and being awarded money. In 2020, Stephen Waller and Corey Birkeland were awarded an award, as well as Ramachandran here from KU Medical Center. And those were our first 2 successes of those. The Embark is also working with NIH to kind of support RADx technology. And again, they were successful in getting Steve Soper funds to help support his diagnostic COVID-19 program as well. So we've had good success from our particular regions. We've continued to increase the number of participants in the boot camp. And here's a list of those, particularly from 2021. We continue to do that. So from KU, Corey Birkeland, Brandon Nikoski, Lang Ju, Linda De Silva, and also from Oklahoma, and Cassis Jacoby participated in that. And so one of my jobs in this particular program is to help network, educate, identify folks. If you're interested in participating in this program, there will be letters of intent for the next cycle come out in October. And then I will work with you to kind of help figure out the logistics of matching funding and kind of the aspects of whether you're right for the Embark program. So as Sharp Hub is sort of sunsetting, just based on NIH's, the changes that we had, we'll continue to kind of provide services to the central region states as long as we can. We've had at least over 20 companies from KU and KU Med participate in this, and still lots of one-on-one mentoring available, and we'll continue to do that. We've been working with Tricia Bergman extensively at KU Lawrence, and she let me know that they have plans for a fall startup school here. She thought it was probably going to be October, November. They're still working on the details, getting the speakers in place. This will be available to everyone in this audience to participate, talking on a range of different, this is usually about a 6 to 7 week virtual boot camp that meets once a week. And so if you're interested in this, I'll make sure that as information comes out and they firm up the details, I'll make sure that KU Med has a lot of opportunities within Startup School. A couple of other aspects. So as I mentioned, NIH sort of changed the structure in which they supported the accelerator hubs, and they came out with a proposal, I guess last fall, to develop something called the NIH iRead program. And so KU Lawrence put in an application for that, entitled Smart Tools to Accelerate Research Translation by Uplifting Participants for the Central Region. That was led by Lisa Fries and Trishan Bergman and KU Lawrence. It's based off a lot of the activities of the Sharp Hub and the gaps and needs that we identified. I think they're in the hunt to get paid. The funding decision comes out sometime soon, and so they've filed a just in time, and they're waiting to see if they've been selected as the sole hub for KU for the Central Region states. And so we're hopeful that they'll get funded by this, and then there'll be a big push to kind of make sure this is available to everyone in our region. And then Tricia was also involved in an NSF I-Core Hub application that was led by Washington University in St. Louis, and you can see the universities that were participating in that. And again, this is to develop a scalable I-Core training program here in the Central Region and really collaborate with these universities to kind of provide education. Funding decisions will come out later this fall, and we'll hope for that. But it's been a great relationship to work within these networks and identify approaches that we can educate folks within our particular region. And we're fortunate that these folks are inclusive of us as well. So I'll let you know as we kind of learn whether these opportunities get funded. So I think with that, I can either stop here. We can take questions at the end. I can turn it over to Scott, or I can take questions right now.
Why don't we take a few questions right now? Because I think you've got a lot of unique programs. You put a lot of information there. We may come back to some combined questions at the end. Unfortunately, we do mute everybody on the line. So if you have questions for Dr. Wright, stick them in the chat, and we'll be monitoring the chat. And also, as Dr. Weir goes with his, go ahead and stick your, I should have said this at the beginning, go ahead and put questions into the chat as we go along. I had a couple of questions that for you. First off, could you, I was actually going to ask you specifically about health IT and where that fits into the entrepreneurship, because most of the examples, particularly at the beginning, you were talking about biomedical, and I think most of us just think of this conceptually as wet lab type of innovations. But then I did see that you had something from Dr. De Silva related to health IT application development. Where does that fit in? Are these handled all the same?
I think they're program dependent. It's a good point. You know, all of these programs have their guidelines and directives. And I think health IT, for example, Embark, I think they're willing to discuss it. I think that they have guidelines that NIH would like them to sort of follow, but I think that we're trying to be as inclusive of that as possible. We haven't done well, for example, Sharp Hub had a few health IT sort of components to that, but that was not prominent. And that was partly through our guidelines of what they wanted us to sort of do. So I think if you have ideas in health IT, have a conversation with all of these folks to see if they're interested and can, you know, that's part of what they can support in that. Yeah, it's a good question. It's frustrating to have all these NIH guidelines saying, you can do this, don't do this, stay out of that area. And you're like, okay, but we want to help everybody, right? So it's difficult.
Yeah, and that might relate to my next question, which is there's lots of different programs here, and it's hard to know where to start. Where does an investigator who thinks that they might have some ideas that might be marketable, where should they go?
Yeah. Well, this is kind of what the way we've done this is they've been able to sort of reach out to me and I can kind of direct them based on a conversation. So the next general step for me would be have them meet with Wally Meyer and have a conversation about where they're at and what they're doing and where they're at in what stage are they at. And then what are the opportunities? How would I get educations? For example, if you're interested in this, I would really suggest participating in the startup school. If you've got an idea that you've got really strong data and really kind of start to working with tech transfer to think about the ways to protect your ideas, you might be ready to kind of think about looking at Embark. If you're farther along than that and are ready to write an SBIR, STTR grant, but have no idea how to do that, I would make sure that you're in contact with BBC. So again, this is part of what we kind of developed with SharpHub, is there are people at a huge range that are jumping into this. And so we've got to be a concierge service to kind of try and find a way to kind of get you in contact with the right people. So yeah,
Okay,
it's a good point. Right.
Yeah, networking and connections are absolutely critical, but appreciate your willingness. So a brief paragraph of what you're trying to do, send it to Doug Wright, and we can get some connections
Right.
So that also relates a little bit. We have a question in the chat from Nohiria related to where do you find info on funding opportunities? Would some of that occur during the startup school? Obviously, there are links to SBIRs and STTRs that you could get through the BBC group.
Yeah, I think we have probably some of that on the SharpHub as well, and also Embark as well. But again, that's a big question. If you're new to this field, how do you really get started in this process? Where can you find early stage proof of concept funding? And we're really lacking it in our central region state. And so again, it's not easy to find that information. And I think you can probably, if you're interested, you can email me and I can send you a couple of links, particularly the SharpHub. I know that's one of the things that we still struggle with, is trying to find early stage funding. Is there funding within the university? Are there programs within that? Likely not, unless the university has programs already. I would think probably Oklahoma was the farthest along of the central region states in terms of their state funds, private funds, university funds to sort of support that. But the Dakotas had nothing, zero. So, it's really sort of difficult. KU is kind of a mix. We have some, funding, and again, having conversations with Wally is probably a great place to sort of start saying, look, you need this money for this. You might want to write an R01, but you're not ready for that. Or let's try and find a way, maybe you're really a good fit for Embark, and that's a good way to kind of get it going. So,
and some of this framing would come up through the startup school as well. As you go through that, you'd be in a better position to figure out what your funding questions really were. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes it's still better to write an R01 because there's data that you need to collect and you're not quite ready for that. But you need to think about that when you write your R01, to kind of having an understanding of where you need to get to so that you can go after proof of concept funding, I think is important as well. That's part of the problem.
Okay, and then just finally, you did mention KUMC, KU quite a bit in your discussion, but with Frontiers, we are a multi-institutional group, both sides of the state line, Children's Mercy, UMKC, but a lot of your work really is at a regional level. So everybody in Frontiers could drop an email to you regardless of their institution. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, Embark in particular is Missouri and Kansas and the other regional states. And so, yeah, that's not some of the programs that I am, like, for example, the KNBRI, I have to look completely west, right? I can't even mention Missouri, but other programs are more regional. SharpHub, I think we've kind of been really flexible to try and work with as many people as we can.
Okay, and I actually forgot, we actually have two ways you can post your questions. One is in the chat and one is in the Q&A. And so we do have a question in the Q&A. Can you tell us more about the Startup School, about what it is for, who can attend, and is this a program that people need to apply for if interested?
Yeah, the application is probably just signing up for that. I don't think that there's going to be, I'm relatively sure there's no cost to participating in the KU Startup School. This is led by Wally Meyer and has had a lot of participants, including Scott, come in and provide information to that. I think it's open to everyone. And so one of the things that I think is important is that in entrepreneurship, we have very multidisciplinary teams. It could be a PI, it could be a resident, it could be a graduate student, it could be a postdoctoral fellow, and all of those folks are encouraged to participate in those in the startup school. It's not just for PIs. And so I think bringing a team together, is important, and really kind of thinking about the way that we can operate in entrepreneurship in the academic setting. It's not super easy, and there are ways that we have to sort of structure our team in order to kind of to participate in these activities. And so all of those folks would be absolutely invited to kind of participate in Startup School. And again, that you'll see that from, in the past, it's a lot of postdocs and students and some PIs and other members of the team. So I think everyone should be encouraged to do that.
And just for everybody in the audience, Frontiers is working on their communications channels to make sure we can get the right messaging out to you. So Doug, we'll be working with you moving forward to make sure as that those dates for the Startup School get a little bit closer to get that information and the methods out to the full Frontiers community. So
absolutely happy to do that.
Yeah, really appreciate you working with us. Okay, well, let's slightly shift gears. Let's turn it over to Scott Weir to talk with us about IAMI and bridging the Valley of Death. I think he'll tell us what that valley is, though I suspect most people on the call are already pretty aware of some of these concepts. Scott, let me turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Ed. And as you said, and certainly as Doug's commented, our two programs really are quite synergistic, and in fact we have investigators that we've both supported. What I'm going to talk about is perhaps maybe a subset of the technology areas that Doug supports, and it's a subset really kind of based on the ecosystems around discovering and developing new drug treatments, diagnostic tests, and medical devices. So, and I know Ed and Teresa and Ashley will provide a PDF of these slides, if you're interested. I've been in drug discovery and development now for going on 37 years, and I spent the first 20 years in big pharma. And certainly when I grew up, when I was going to graduate school, and I think in my early days of pharma, there was this kind of traditional role of the academic investigator. And it was kind of, as I've kind of summarized here on this slide, that the focus really was on molecular biology discoveries to help us better understand how diseases emerge and progress, and a real focus on basic research. And certainly when I was in pharma, we thought of academic investigators as, working in his or her lab, and that it's more like golf as opposed to football. But the drug discovery and development ecosystem has dramatically changed over the last 20 years, and I've shown some data here. Today, academia plays a major role in the successful development of new therapeutic agents. And you can see here on the slides. And again, what's evolving is that the majority of the drugs getting approved by the FDA and appearing on the market to help patients broadly, the majority of these new therapies have origins with academic discoveries. And as well with the second bullet here, certainly cancer, and about 60% of what we work on as IAMI is cancer relevant. Cancer is certainly one of the top two research areas. The other thing, and this is a major contributor to this term, the Valley of Death, that academic investigators face, is that the development of new drugs, diagnostics, and devices is largely not affordable to academic institutions. It's well over $1 billion today to bring a new drug to market. And if you incorporate the costs associated with failures, it's averaged well over, and that should be billion, not million per therapy. Sorry for that typo. Now, we, and I don't know if you can all see my arrow, but a lot of folks in drug discovery and development, they depict the process as a series of chevrons that move from the left to the right. And certainly in terms of drug therapy, it starts with a biology discovery. We then develop an assay to screen libraries of compounds in hopes of finding a compound or a chemical that would engage with that target. And then we start the drug discovery and development process, move into preclinical safety testing, required to move into early phase clinical trials, and then we conduct those trials. And if a drug appears to work in a small population of patients, then that justifies investing the $1 billion or so to be able to complete development, get regulatory approval, and then launch the product. In our world, where again, we're making these discoveries and doing the early development work from a target from a biology discovery through a clinical trial, and let's say 30 to 40 evaluable patients, costs on the order of $10 to $12 million. With this ecosystem dramatically changing over the past several years now, historically, and when I grew up in pharma, this is the region, or this is the area where we would typically license technology from academic institutions. But today, industry is expecting universities, academia, to further de-risk or further advance projects from the left to the right. And as a result, it requires upwards of a $12 million investment from somebody somewhere. Okay, now, in order for our investigators to participate in this ecosystem, we've got to develop new skill sets. And I've listed those here and probably don't need to read them. But it also requires competencies in participating on and leading high performance product development teams. As I'll say in a few slides, we say that it takes a village to discover and develop a drug. Now, I showed you the picture 2 slides ago of the chevrons moving from the left to the right across the slide. And honestly, the process is not that simple. These are slides, and I've given the reference here. I was part of a process led by the Institute of Medicine, where we mapped the drug discovery and development process, both for small molecule agents and biologics. And rather than these chevrons in this linear process, what actually happens is there are what we call neighborhoods, where a project, a series of experiments are conducted in great level of detail. And if you run into some issues or problems in the experiments, whether they're in vitro or in vivo, that are being conducted within one of these neighborhoods, you can very quickly get into a deep rabbit hole and not be able to find your way out unless you really have the deep domain expertise to be able to do so. And so what it really requires today is a bit of that domain expertise, but also knowing how can I find that deep domain expertise to help me get out of this rabbit hole and move my project forward. The other feature is that it's no longer, projects are no longer being driven by a basic scientist or a basic and clinician scientist. A critically important member of the team today is a translational scientist. And I would encourage you, if you're interested, to read the paper published by the NCATS group on really what are the fundamental characteristics of a translational scientist. And I think participating in the discovery and development process, it's tremendous opportunities to be able to develop the skills in these 7 competencies. So for IAMI, our vision is to change this, develop products that change the standard of care for pediatric, adolescent, adult, and elderly patients that suffer from cancer and rare diseases. We like to say that we practice the 80-20 rule, that 80% of what we work on is described on this page, but the other 20% were opportunistic in terms of really impactful discoveries that we might be able to help folks move forward. So our focus is pharmaceuticals, diagnostics, and devices with clear paths to market. And our investment, or our core hypothesis, is if we invest, and the emphasis on the word invest, if we invest in high potential academic projects with industry experienced input, in other words, we're getting input from the outside on whether a project warrants investment or not. And then within IAME, we have a great deal of industry experience leadership that together, working with our academic investigators, we're going to generate a better success rate than the typical academic model, and ultimately with the goal that we bring products to market that help our patients. So what we've done, certainly within Frontiers and within the Cancer Center, is we've created this translational research culture. And this is a Cancer Center focused slide, but I think it illustrates the point that we have ideas for projects that come from researchers in research programs or clinicians working in various therapeutic areas, but also through external partners and collaborators. And these ideas can either come into the drug discovery development process on the left-hand side here, which is really very, very early stage at, say, the chemistry biology interface, but also there are opportunities where ideas can be taken directly into experimental therapeutics trials. And what we've done is we've created these steering committees to help folks develop their concepts and be able to move high potential projects forward through investment. Now, to go from the left hand to the right hand side here, from again the bench into clinical trials, as I mentioned earlier, costs $10 to $12 million. So how do we bridge that valley? And we're bridging that valley of death through a public-private partnership called CureBridge Collaborative. So, you know, Doug described this fantastic set of resources that he and his team have developed to be able to help faculty advance their startup companies. In other words, to translate their laboratory discoveries into new companies that can move those technologies forward. So that's one path or one option. There's also, for academic investigators, the traditional licensing deal, where we make a discovery and that discovery or those inventions are licensed to an established company who really has the resources to move that technology forward. And in the upper left-hand corner of this slide, I show the example of first-in-class anti-cancer agents called P97 inhibitors that were discovered on the Lawrence campus, led by Frank Shanin, that were licensed to Cleve Biosciences. They did some further improvements on Frank's work, and today one of these agents is in ongoing phase one trials in solid tumors as well as leukemia, with the leukemia trial being conducted here. Now, in cancer, investigators have the opportunity to work with the NCI's experimental therapeutics program, and you can apply for resources to be able to help you support development activities. But each of those activities, as I showed in those detailed maps, you have to apply for the different programs individually, as opposed to getting support for your overall integrated program. This is also a highly competitive application process with, with a success rate, an application success rate, kind of similar to R01 applications. So we felt strongly that we needed a third avenue. And certainly for us in the region, and Doug had a fantastic slide describing, what are the strengths and what are the weaknesses we have here in our region. And honestly, as Doug said, we lack institutional investors and a venture capital presence here in the region. Unfortunately, now, several years ago, we lost the Kansas Bioscience Authority, which had I still feel a negative impact. And then as shown on the right-hand side of this slide, we've historically not had a great track record nationally in securing small business grants to support startups. So, as I mentioned earlier, going from the left at least into early phase clinical trials requires a $12 million investment. And how to get there, and I guess a way that we are attempting to bridge this valley of death, is through this preferred public-private partnership called CureBridge Collaborative. And what we're doing is putting private capital and SBIR, STTR funding into early stage projects through basically the end of the discovery process. And then with that, through our partnership, we are then investing capital to be able to then advance projects through early phase clinical trials in order to establish that a drug has promising clinical activity with an adequate safety profile, and then ultimately to be able to build a data package that would support partnering with a corporate or commercial partner who really has the resources to take the project the next way, the rest of the way. Now, our partner is called BioNovus Innovations. It's a group of private investors and Kansas City community leaders who came together specifically to help us move these technologies forward. And they came together because they believe in KU, they believe in the Cancer Center, and they believe in the Institute for Advancing Medical Innovation. And so as an example, for one of our technologies, BioNovus created a subsidiary virtual biotech company. And by virtual, what I mean is basically a management team of experts across the disciplines necessary to bring a drug through the development process. And that management team is under a subsidiary biotech called Cyclamed. We licensed an anti-cancer agent called foscyclopirox directly into Cyclamed. And on the right-hand side of this slide, what I describe is the investment that IAMI made in that technology while it was in the university. We built this data package that was sufficient to get BioNovus interested and excited and committed to making further investment. And then through our team, and I'll show the team here in a minute, we've been able to develop this drug, advance this drug through early development into ongoing early phase clinical trials, really at industry speeds. And this is a timeline that the team's been able to achieve. Now, this has been about a $12 million investment. But what's important to us as a university is it's created opportunities for our investigators to directly participate in development activities. And those have been in the form of meeting with FDA to define requirements for moving this drug into humans for the very first time, conducting sponsored research studies to be able to support the development of this drug post-license into Cyclamed. And then certainly what's important for all of us, and certainly our CTSA program and Cancer Center, is our ability to show that we can advance our discoveries from the bench to the bedside. And in the case of this project, we currently have our 4th clinical trial running in leukemia, and 3 of the 4 trials that we've conducted or open to date or completed have been conducted, at least in part, here at the medical center. So the experiences that our investigators have gained through this is participating as a member of the management team of the companies, while again, being able to keep our day jobs in the university, opportunities in project management, serving as a principal investigator on clinical trials, supporting chemistry, manufacturing, and controls activities, as well as characterizing mechanisms of action, and then being able to drive business into our cores and centers, which are supporting both the development activities as well as ongoing clinical trials. And then as well on the right-hand side, being able to directly engage with FDA and learn and develop some of the competencies in those detailed process maps that I showed earlier. Now, we function as a biotech, and we put together business plans, and we clearly define the investment thesis to advance the discoveries that we've identified. We execute project plans through multidisciplinary, multi-organizational project teams with direct investment to be able to advance projects through a series of go, no-go decisions. And we put enough money into these projects to get them to a value inflection point. And then certainly while the projects in the university side, our focus is investing enough money to build a data package that supports partnering with the private sector. So we say it takes a village. For this particular anti-cancer agent, this is our village. And it's got folks from the university and across campuses within our company, external advisors, as well as folks regionally and nationally in areas of expertise in terms of oncology development, regulatory science, intellectual property management, et cetera. And why is this particular partnership important for our region? Well, it's another translational research path for high priority projects, whether they arise from KU, from Children's Mercy or Stowers. It's opportunities to directly participate in development activities. Some of us at my age and approaching my age, we're kind of worried about where is the next generation of entrepreneurs and drug development experts going to come from. And we really need to be developing the next generation. Certainly, this has been this particular project, Fosacyclopirox, was a highlight in our application to the National Cancer Institute, seeking comprehensive cancer center designation. We've built training and education opportunities into the partnership. There is the potential for revenue return to both the university and to inventors. And then again, with driving business into the region, we're impacting the regional economy. And then nationally, this is a program that's gotten us quite a bit of national visibility all the way up through the NCI, and specifically not only the NCI director, but the Cancer Centers program and the NCI STTR SBIR program. And then lastly, just to close, it's also had an impact. The Fosacyclopirox program has had an impact on our research programs here at the university. And through this one project, it's resulted in recruitment of leading bladder cancer experts to the university, building out research programs, not only in terms of research tools like patient registries and repositories, but building and identifying potential drug targets, unique approaches to characterizing how drugs work, and then also innovative approaches to designing early phase clinical trials to get us answers as quickly as we can. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Scott, thank you so much. Please put questions into the chat or into the Q&A box below. While we're waiting to see if anybody has any questions, Scott, could you just give us a sense as to, I mean, this looks like we see the Fosacyclopirox example. It looks like a very big program, but it's not clear where the entry point is. Who exactly are you looking for to support? At what level, stage? Who do you anticipate knocking on your door saying, Scott, help me get through this IAME process?
It could be anybody and everybody with a laboratory discovery or a bedside observation that they think could lead to a drug, a diagnostic, or a medical device technology. And folks can absolutely contact me, and we'll figure it out. If it doesn't make sense, we will very objectively, make an evaluation and walk you through, why it, let's say, may not warrant an investment. But if there's a potential project, our job is to try and scrape together money while it's still in the university, to be able to support the conduct of experiments, whether that's in the PI's lab or through cores and centers or with folks on the outside, to better understand what the potential is. And then if it's a candidate for the public-private partnership, then we roll.
Sounds like they wouldn't necessarily need to go through the startup school, but if they had the startup school experience, they might be better prepared in some of these conversations, huh?
Absolutely. But it's not required. I know, and as you know, Ed, as we both work through Frontiers and the Cancer Center, through those programs, we have the benefit of, really knowing an awful lot in terms of who's working on what. Some of the other areas, unfortunately less so, but we have physical presences on both the Lawrence Medical Center campuses, over in Fairway, and then certainly we're down at Children's Mercy and over at Stowers quite a bit.
Sounds great. Okay, well, thank you. I really appreciate everybody's participation today. Some of the questions that we actually had, you covered a lot of information. I think we were going to get the PDFs available from you that we could actually share. There's so much information there. And then Treza, did you want to remind us again as to, if you haven't actually signed up for credit for the session, you can pull that out of the chat again to sign up for any credit. And then we want you to join us again for Research and Discovery Grand Rounds on, Treza, help me out, that is July 28th, is that right?
July 28th, yes.
July 28th, and we will be talking about the Quality Value Improvement Consortium effort. So thank you, everybody, for joining us, and especially Doug, Scott, thank you so much for taking the time to present to us today.
Absolutely.